I'm sure you've been wondering, how exactly is Joe Biden going to wiggle his way out of this one, right? What lie is he going to come up with to rationalize the criminal behavior of his son and his brother and himself and anyone else who's been in the dirty, slimy, tawdry Biden world over the last several years? Well, we got a little hint of it from Nicholas Kristof at the New York Times. He wrote an article this weekend saying, this whole Hunter Biden story, it's not really about presidential corruption. Oh, hey guys, it's not about presidential corruption. That's a relief, isn't it? No, Nick Kristof says it's really about addiction. And there was Ana Navarro on The View, Johnny on the spot, picking up the talking point and the narrative that seems to be repeated now from the left all over the place. Here's Anna. Go, Anna. Go on. Come on.
The Hunter Biden story, the scandal, the this, the that, it's also the story of a father's love. And Joe Biden has never and will never give up on his son Hunter, and will never treat him lesser than. And so he is a father first. Take it or leave it.
I choose leave it. Curtis Houck is the managing editor at Newsbusters. Curtis, this thing, it's not about tax fraud. It's not a gun felony charges. It's not about taking bribes. It's not about selling out our country to a foreign national. It's not about any of those things. And it's certainly not about the tawdry photographs with very young-looking prostitutes. No. Curtis, it's about a father's love.
It's not about selling state secrets either, Larry. You know, it's not about any of that either. It's the same sort of thing how Joe Biden seemingly just tries to bring up Beau Biden every single chance he gets. I understand he lost his son, but, you know, when he was with the families, the 13 Americans who died at the Abbey Gate in Kabul, he was trying to be like, I know just how you feel. That's what some of the families have said, that he tried to tell them, I was in your position when my son died of brain cancer. And you're like, no, not quite. And the media really didn't bat an eye at this at all because, you know, we're supposed to feel sorry for Joe Biden as if he's just this person who's been beset by tragedy. It's the same sort of thing with the Kennedys. We're supposed to have, you know, give Kennedys extra grace in their behavior, you know, over the years, over the decades, because so many horrible things have happened to them. Therefore, we, you know, should give them, except RFK Jr. Except RFK Jr., we can't talk about him at all because he has really crazy views. He can't even be talked about at all.
He's not a sympathetic figure because he's running against Joe Biden. You're so right.
It's just a personal leash. It's a long leash that just never seems to end. And where they say talking about this takes away from real issues that are pertinent to our democracy.
Oh yeah, well that's the old playbook going all the way back to Bill Clinton. To be fair, Richard Nixon used that one too during Watergate. But you're so right to point this out. It's like I remember the Menendez brothers, the murdering brothers who killed their parents, and their lawyer argued for mercy in front of the jury because, after all, they're orphans, right? It's like, that's exactly what this is like. So is the media going to pick up on this? I mean, you saw on Friday, Curtis, you watch these guys all the time. It seemed like in the press briefing, some of these reporters were smelling blood in the water.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, we did a time count of ABC, CBS, NBC. We just put out this morning from our Jeff Dickens. We found that between Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the major broadcast networks gave 5 minutes and 3 seconds on Hunter Biden and his WhatsApp, you know, all this kind of Hunter Biden coverage. But, you know, as we look then at the Trump indictment coverage, we've zoomed out since the initial indictment on June 8th that came out, leaked out through today. We are at 510 minutes of coverage.
Wow.
For Trump. But we can't even get 10 minutes on Hunter Biden.
Right.
We can't get to any of that because, again, drug addiction.
They're still in single digits. Well, sure, because, you know, I'm sure the editor in the newsroom says, no, we don't want to do a segment on this because people are bored with drug addiction, and that's really all this story is. And a father's love. That's the other part of the story. Meanwhile, I mean, I don't know about father's love, but it sure seems like Joy Reid and her colleagues at MSNBC, they've got it bad for Donald Trump. Take a look at this.
What'll happen here?
And Stuart, I'm going to give you the last word on this because, you know, Chris Christie got booed for telling the truth about Trump. So, and he's at 5%. He's, you know, he's somewhere. He's not nowhere. He's ahead of Nikki Haley and some of the others. But what does it say about the Republican Party that the next guy down is Ron DeSantis, who is running the most openly fascist campaign I think I've ever seen? And I'm saying that having covered Donald Trump running for president. That's the next guy down.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you're inside the DeSantis war room, you got to think of a way to get yourself indicted to get up ahead of Donald Trump. This just goes to my point that this is what the party wants to be. And it's a hard thing for a lot of us who worked in the party to accept that we helped create this month. But we did. And this is very purposeful by the party. It's not something they stumbled into. Their second choice is a guy who is worse than Trump. So it's a threat to what it means really to be an American. And I think we have to realize that and address it accordingly.
Yeah, it is hard to believe this is the same party whose former...
First of all, that guy's a Lincoln Project guy, I believe. But secondly, I mean, they talk about how horrible Republicans are and how horrible Trump is and how terrible these things are. But Curtis, they love them, don't they? They can't do without Trump. They can't do without the Republican Party right now. They'd be nowhere.
Well, first, Larry, I have to point out, 21-year-old Curtis is still bitter about Stuart Stevens' role in the Mitt Romney campaign. Say what you want about Mitt Romney, but for those of us of a certain age, that was our candidacy, that our first real presidential campaign, and the disappointment of that night is still deep within my heart, that feeling that we thought we were going to win and we didn't. So I blame Stuart Stevens, total clown. But on 2024, I mean, I have to say, folks, it is right in front of you. They need Donald Trump. The Lincoln Project exists and lives off of Donald Trump. They leech off of Donald Trump. So the idea that anybody else is there, they cannot make the same argument. That kind of claim that DeSantis is more dangerous than Trump, it's going to fall on deaf ears. The entire point of going after Ron DeSantis is to elevate Donald Trump, because the moment Donald Trump goes away, whenever that is, 2028, 2032, whenever, the money spigot is going off.
Right.
And Stuart Stevens and all the rest of them, John Weaver's Lincoln Project, they're not going to be able to afford their fancy kitchens or spots on Morning Joe anymore.
Yeah, and listen, Curtis, I think what you're saying is so obviously true, because all you have to do is watch how they interview any of the other candidates. They mentioned Chris Christie. Well, they bring Chris Christie on for a 10-minute segment. 8 of those minutes is talking about Trump.
That's all it is. Yeah, I mean, even, What Are the Uyghurs? Francis Suarez was on with George Stephanopoulos the day he announced, and they spent it all talking about Trump.
Right.
And he just said the American people are frustrated. Even a liberal Republican like him is like, give me a break here. It's really only Asa Hutchinson who's really willing to sit and listen and talk about Donald Trump the entire time, because otherwise nobody's going to know who this guy is anyway.
Well, that's why we still have a very bad case of Asa fever over here.
Yeah, exactly. Asa Mentum. It's like Jim Gilmore over here.
Fire. But Curtis, you referenced the mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez, who earlier today on our colleague Hugh Hewitt's program here on Salem News Channel, he was asked, what about the Uyghurs? He had no idea what he was talking about. I think he referred to them as the Weebles at one point. But this is a perfect example. It took Hugh Hewitt to ask a policy question about China and very specific issues that Francis Suarez might have to actually confront as a president should he win the election. George Stephanopoulos never asked that. None of the other people on any of the shows that he's gone on asked that, because they don't care. They don't treat this thing like a presidential election. They treat it like the Trump show.
Right, and that was the point in the George Stephanopoulos interview with Francis Suarez. His point was, the more you talk about Trump and only Trump and nothing else, no other candidate, no other issues, there isn't going to be a primary. The voters aren't going to get to hear from anybody else. And Stephanopoulos blurted out, well, that's inevitable.
Yeah.
Inevitable. Putting your thumb on the scales, that is election interference to the highest degree.
Yeah.
Which
is fine. They have every right to do that.
But you don't have to say to these Trump surrogates really quick, if they want to have cabinet positions, say Trump does get elected, they're going to get asked all these sorts of policy questions in any Senate confirmation hearing. So it's not good for them either to just be talking about Donald Trump.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And also, by the way, the media can go ahead and do what they want, but don't sit there and obsess over Donald Trump and make every segment about Donald Trump and then whine and lament that Donald Trump is doing so well and, oh, what has happened to our country with that? You've made this man. So enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. Curtis Houck, Newsbusters, thank you. There's more to come.
Larry.
This is O'Connor Tonight.